All right, Danny, welcome to the roller coaster. Great to see you again.
Thanks for having me, Carl. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's been an interesting year for both of us so far. We just wrapped up an incredible tour in the U.S. with Porno for Pyros,
Yeah.
and I was so inspired by meeting you, and you basically shared with me your story and your professional background. And I think there's a lot that people can take out from this conversation, from your life experience. So, as I always do, I'd like to start from the very beginning. So, if you could just tell us a little bit about where were you born, where'd you come from, where'd you go to school, and things like that. A little bit about your childhood and how you started your professional career, which I'm going to keep it zipped and I'll let you tell everyone what were you doing before, what are you doing now.
Oh man, start from the beginning. This is gonna be a long podcast. No,
We've got time.
it all started the day I was born. No, well, so the music industry is not a place I ever imagined myself or thought I would end up at all. Really, um, my family are all trades workers. None of them finished. No, none of them went to college. Some of them didn't finish high school. They just kind of went out and started general contracting businesses. And my dad's been an electrician since he was 18. And like I have all of those people. My family is really into racing and mechanics and all of those things. So I just imagined I would end up in that field eventually. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I got a job. I was bartending and waitressing and doing all these things. And then I'm getting, older and older. And I'm like, I need like a big girl job. There are those forever bartenders and they love it and it's amazing and they make that work for them. Um, but I got a job at the hospital as a nurse's aide. And this was in 2014, maybe. And I was like, not bad at this. I'm gonna go to nursing school. And so I did. I went to nursing school. I was at the hospital for 9 years as a cardiovascular tech. I worked in cardiothoracic surgery, prepping patients for surgery, putting IVs in,
Wow.
vital signs, doing all the things. Went to nursing school. Very touchy subject for me. I did the whole entire program the whole way through. Did not end up with my degree. Stayed at the hospital for a while, but it was a time in my life where like I was, to get vulnerable, I guess. I my whole entire life was crashing down around me. Like I was getting divorced, I was getting kicked out of school, losing my house. Like I was losing everything, and it was a time where I was like really trying to self reflect. And I felt like I did not know who I was as a person. And I was like, I don't know what I even like doing at this point. Like I have no idea. And I had just started diving into photography, and I was just, something I always loved. I never really was able to get into. I couldn't afford a camera and all that stuff. So I started doing local shows, working with little like local artists doing headshots and portraits and things like that. And they're like, come out to a show and like photograph. I wasn't, you're not making any money doing that. But I was like, oh, I kind of love doing this. And then I found out there's like this whole world. I was, an avid concert goer, but you don't think as a person that just goes to concerts, like you don't think about the fact that there's an entire world behind the scenes that goes into putting those shows on. Like it's just something that I was like so blind to, I guess, and just something I didn't think about. And when I found out that you can get these jobs and you like there are things you can just do and you don't have to have a college degree, you just have to, know the right people. And so I was like, interesting. So I started DMing bands, like just, you know, small bands that didn't have tour photographers that were coming through local venues. And I'm like, hey, like, do you guys give out photo passes? You know, and some of them responded back, and I started doing that, and I started putting my work out, and I was like, love doing it. It was just something I immediately had a passion for. And I was like, I did not know this like existed within me. Like, this is so great. And then I happened to be doing a promo shoot for a local band at a local venue. The band Red was on an acoustic tour, and Keith Wallen from Breaking Benjamin has a solo project, and he was opening for them. And Jerome, the tour manager for Breaking Benjamin, and Keith both came up to me, and they're like, hey, like, what are you doing? What's going on? You got a camera in your hand. And I was like, yes, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm in your way. Like, I'm going to get out of your way here, because they're trying to, like, they're about to load in, and we were there super early. I was like, okay, I got to get out of here. And they're like, no, like, you should stay for the show. And I was like, oh, like, no, I'm not going to do that. And yeah, and they're like, what? Like, yeah, like, you should stay. And so they talked me into it. I stayed. I ended up shooting the show. They were super nice, super nice guys. But yeah, that's sort of how I broke into it. Like, I quit. I ended up quitting. So okay, backtrack. I'm getting ahead of it. But I met Jerome, and they ended up having me out to like a couple more Breaking Bench shows, just to, first 3 songs in the pit kind of deal. And that was that. And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. Prior to that, I shot a Toby Keith show, which was like, sorry, my phone is going off. I have to set it away. Distracting me, my ADD. It's getting wild. Yeah, but prior to this happening, actually, I shot a Toby Keith show, and he had a very strict no media policy. I was there to shoot an opener. I drove like 3 hours in the pouring rain to Atlantic City. It was my very first big show, very first time I traveled by myself. And I went to that, and that was sort of the moment that I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. They said, no, you cannot shoot Toby. Like, there's not supposed to be any outside media here. And then it ended up that his tour manager was like, hey, you seem nice. Like, I heard you drove really far. Like, I'll give you the first 3 songs. And then that was sort of the moment that I was like, okay, I want to do this. And that's when I started networking really, really hard. And then that's when I met Jerome and Keith. And I stayed for that show. They had me out to some more Breaking Bench shows. And I was like, yes, like, this is what I want to do. I think this is amazing. And I fully, like, went into this thinking I was going to be a content person. Like, I wanted to do photos, like, do all these things. So Jerome actually ended up calling me a while later, and he's like, hey, my VIP rep has to go to a wedding. Like, would you want to come fill in for a couple of days? And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, Breaking Benjamin, I've listened to them since I was like in middle school or something. Like, so, and it was on an Alice in Chains, Breaking Ben, and Bush tour, and I'm like,
wow.
You know, those are bands that I grew up listening to. I'm like, this is literally insane to me. So I went out, filled in for a couple of days, and I just like felt so comfortable. And I was like, I love doing this. This is going to be my career. I do not know how I'm going to do it, but like, this is going to be it. Because I wasn't actually on the tour. I was just filling in. And, you know, I was still working at the hospital at the time. And then he was like, hey, call me back. I finished that. He called me back like 2 weeks later, and he's like, do you want to finish the tour with us? And I was like, the hospital is not a place that you can just like take off work. they don't like that. Like, they need their people in the hospital working. And so it's like there are 3-4 weeks left of this tour. I'm like, I can't take a month off of work. And I was like, I need you to make it make sense, like with my, my rate at the hospital. And I didn't get paid much at all on my first tour, but touring is one of those things where, like, you get fed on the road. Like, you're not paying for all of these extra expenses, that you're paying for at home. So I was like, I can maybe make this work. I don't know. If I quit the hospital, I'm going to be losing all of my benefits, all of my seniority. I've been there for 9 years, like, I have a retirement plan. I have all of these things, a very stable and steady career that I've worked so, so, so hard for years, going to school and having, massive, massive school loans, to do this thing that I have set my heart out to do for so long and been so passionate about. And a lot of stuff happened within my career in healthcare that I was becoming very draining. And I love healthcare, and we absolutely need those people, but for me it was just becoming very draining, and I could feel myself, like, just in a place where I was lost. And then this sort of came along, and I was like, I didn't know that it was going to take until my 30s to find, like, what I was actually supposed to be doing. And so I went out, and he said, you want to finish the tour? And I was like, I need to think about it. I can't just up and quit my job. Like, the logical part of my brain just will not allow me to do that. But I thought about it, and I talked to my parents, which I was really nervous about, and they were so supportive. And they were like, listen, like, my parents had me and my brother when they were 18, 19 years old, and they didn't get to go do all the things that they wanted to do. They had little kids, and I just thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I'm newly divorced. I don't have kids yet. The hospital is a place that will always need workers, and just now could not be a better time to take the risk to do this. And so I was really nervous because I was about to lose everything once again, and maybe this wasn't going to work out. But like, how do you know if you don't take that chance? So I told him I would finish the tour, and I went in to work. I worked overnight. I worked a 12-hour night shift, brought all my little suitcases to the hospital, and my mom, she's so sweet. She was so excited for me, and she came and picked me up at 7 o'clock in the morning from the hospital, drove me straight to the airport, and I went straight to tour. And that was my
Wow.
that was straight to a Breaking Benjamin tour. So he brought me on as their production assistant, and photo, because they weren't in the place for just a photo person at the time. They wanted an extra hand as a production assistant. And I actually ended up falling in love with that role. I was not very good on my first tour. I think, whenever Jerome was like, hey, like, you have to send the runner to do this thing, and I'm like, what's a runner? I think he was like, oh no, I made a mistake. That was probably the moment he's like, my God, what did I do?
Sorry, who is this person that hired you?
Yeah, so this is the tour manager of Breaking Benjamin. So he also tour manages Keith's solo project. And that's, shout out to him, because he really gave me that first foot in the door. Before that, I did like a little tiny van tour with a group of friends. They're a little band called Divide the Fall out of Minnesota. They are phenomenal guys. They took me on my, like, very first little, like, week. They were 1 of 4 opening for Starset in little tiny clubs. First of all, Starset, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that band, but their production does not belong in little clubs. So But I went on that, and it was so fun, and I was like, yeah, this is great. And then, Jerome hired me, and it was scary after that, because I was like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna get another tour again. Like, I don't know any of these. Like, this is very, very, very much an industry where it's like you have to know people. Like, I found out very quickly, like, and I didn't know anybody in the industry. Like, I'm just meeting all of these people for the first time. Like, I have no proof that I'm any good at what I do, and this was my very first tour. And again, like, I didn't know what a runner was. Like, I didn't, I had to figure out, like, hey, you have to stock all these buses and, send people for this and that and make sure this is set up. And luckily we had like such a great crew and a great team that, kept me from drowning. And I felt really overwhelmed, but I learned a lot and I loved it. And I was like, I want to come back. And then her name is Yvette. She's our tour manager on Bush. She came up to me during that very first tour, and she was like, because they were support on that, and she was like, this is your first tour ever? I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, it doesn't seem like it, so I'm going to be calling you. And I was like, okay, like, all right, I'm not mad about that. She ended up calling me like a couple months later. They went out in that was September of 22, and then Bush went out again at the end of January of 23, and she called me. And I've been with Bush ever since as their production assistant, hospitality, wardrobe, and their tour photographer. And I've had been doing a lot of stuff in between, but that's kind of how it all started. I went from 9 years of healthcare thinking that was my journey, that was my career, spiraled into this world somehow. And everyone's like, how'd you get into it? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. The story's too long to tell.
I mean, it's so impressive because you definitely took like a big leap of faith. And I think that I'm gonna ask you this to you because I think your parents being supportive must have weighted quite heavily on you making the decision. Because I can speak for myself. I think on if I was feeling on your shoes, and my parents would turn to me and say, I think you're being completely out of your mind on doing this. I'm not sure how would I personally have reacted to it, but obviously that wasn't the case. And I think that was a major um, force for you to actually go into it, right?
It absolutely was. I couldn't imagine if I didn't have a supportive family. And, you know, my grandmother, so I currently live with my grandmother and my mom in a little apartment basement in her house. So she was worried. She's like, I don't want you to be gone all the time. Like, I don't want you traveling. You're going to be on airplanes and buses and like all these things. You're just going to be gone all the time. And she was like, she lives very cautiously. Like, she's like, I don't know. Like, she's always wanted me to be a nurse. Like, this was like the thing my grandmother wanted. And, I've always been super, super close to her. And I want to make my family proud. And, I want their approval, of course. Like, who doesn't want their parents, blessing or whatever. But, my parents definitely were like, listen, like, maybe it won't work out. Like, maybe it won't, but, how are you going to know? And that really, like, solidified for me, like, it's okay to do this and it's okay to take that chance. Like, you know, for me, I don't know. I was very worried about leaving. I was very worried about, like, I was very proud of the job that I had. I was doing something important and helping people, and, it felt foreign to me to go somewhere where I'm like, am I going to be making a difference? Like, I want to make a difference in people's lives, you know, in whatever role I'm in. And I was nervous that I wasn't going to be doing that. And my parents are like, you will be, but just, you know, like in a different way. In a different way. You know, concerts are such a big thing for people, you know, that go to them. They go for so many reasons. They're so emotional. You talk about, people talk about how music saves them or whatever. So like you'll be making a difference, you know, in other people's lives in a different way, kind of behind the scenes. And so that was helpful for me, for them to be like, just go for it. Just go for it. So I was like, all right, we're going to take the risk. And it worked out way more massively for me than I ever thought possible. Like, I thought this would be a little foot in the door, and maybe in a year or two I would get another tour and I would just end up, you know, going back to the hospital, and that was fine. But I've been touring full time ever since, and it's been, you know, I am really hugely fortunate. The bands that I've worked for have been amazing, and I could not ask, for more than, you know, what I've already been given in this industry.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, it's like exactly like you said. It's such a world behind the scenes that goes on, even when you're doing like a small tour, a van tour, or all the way up to buses and trucks. There's so much going on that people don't even think about it. All the planning that is involved, all the characters and the personalities involved, and dealing with people is a major factor. And one of the things that I love that you mentioned it's that we are constantly helping people out. We're constantly giving support, and we are constantly um, doing things that are invisible to the eyes of the vast majority, but somehow things are working out. And that's because you've been sending emails, you've been replying to messages, you've been checking documents and making sure that things are in place at the right time for the right people. So it's a very mind job as well, because it gets very cluttered sometimes with so many different tasks that you have to do. And
Mm-hmm.
you've mentioned it that you're in your first two, you got a little bit overwhelmed, but that's just like, I mean, you went straight into the eye of the hurricane. Basically, you just got thrown into a tour that was already rolling, and and it was a bus tour and with well established bands acts. So but that's also, I guess, one of the best possible ways to learn the job, right? I think.
Absolutely. You know, like I said, I was really overwhelmed because I was the new guy. Like, the people that are with these bands have been touring for years, and you know, I was afraid that I was going to go in and they were going to be like, "Oh my gosh, this girl has no idea what she's doing. Like, she's terrible at her job." And you know, I was met with a lot of support from the people that I worked with, and everybody was very welcoming, which, you know, I sort of wasn't expecting. You hear about egos in the music industry and all these things, you know, and so I was like, well, I'm definitely going to run into this. But, you know, and there are those people, but like I said, the bands that I've worked for, I have been so like, I know how fortunate I am. I have had an amazing opportunity. Like, not a lot of people coming into this, I don't think, can say, like, hey, my first tour ever was freaking Breaking Ben and Alice in Chains and Bush. Like, no. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but like, for me, I was like, this is crazy. Like, I don't know anybody. I'm freelancing. Like, I don't work for a company that's like put me on like on this tour. So it's, you know, it was really special for me to be able to do that. And then I met, like I said, Yvette brought me on to Bush, and she just has been, you know, an incredible mentor for me. You know, like you said, that first tour, I was given direction, but I was sort of just like, hey, like, you have to figure it out now. Like, this is your job now. You know, and I had people to, you know, to help me along the way. but then Yvette's really been a person that's like, hey, you want to learn these things, like I am willing to teach you, but you need to be willing to work. And when I first went into this, I was like, how hard can it be to be a production assistant? Like, you send runners to go get stuff, you put ice on the buses, like you do that, whatever. Like, it can't be that hard. And I was wrong. I went into it and I was wrong. I'm not going to say it's hard, but it's a lot. It is a lot, like you said, it's a lot of emails, and it's a lot of little tiny details all day long throughout the day. I mean, you tour manage, like it's a culmination of all little things all day long that add up to like a whole day that can be, if you don't have a way to stay organized, like it can very quickly become overwhelming. And we're advancing things months before a tour starts, and it's so much work that goes into it that you don't realize. And the last several tours with Bush, like I have been advancing things and doing a little bit more, and I'm like, okay. And she's like, hey, like, are you ever going to want to tour manage? And I'm like, no, definitely not, don't want to do that. But now I'm sort of like, maybe in like a couple years, like I'm sort of still like, I haven't even been touring for 2 full years yet. um so to be with all of these bands within not even 2 years has been just amazing. I have learned so much from so many people that are seasoned in the industry and have been super welcoming. And I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've learned from those, and you just move forward and you figure it out as you go.
Absolutely. And I love that you've mentioned the word mentor, because a lot of people don't have access to anyone or don't know how to maybe develop that kind of relationship with people that are more experienced than you are in the field, that you really want to learn more about it. Um, I think having mentors in life are just so very important in different areas. You can have mentors in various different areas. In this particular one, it's in your professional area. And I most certainly have mine, and people that I can tap into and say, hey, listen, this is the scenario I'm facing now. What would you suggest? What's the correct approach to this? What's the way out, or even what's the way in? How should I present myself with this particular opportunity coming my way? So it's really, really important, and it's one of the things that I think the greatest minds always kind of like have those, like people that they can contact and consult, and especially in things where there's so many variants. The job is not like, it's never going to be straightforward. There's no manual for it. There are certain things that you have to do, but you're constantly dealing with different people, so it's a different way of, and different backgrounds, and different cultures and countries, so different ways to speak, to type an email or a message, and to communicate. There's so many things that keep changing constantly, even on a daily basis, because every day you're in a different city, in a different town, and depending in a different country. So being flexible and able to, like you said, keep tabs open in your brain, like, and navigate all of them, and not forget, oh, okay, I still have that to do, but I'm gonna tap into that later. It's so
Yeah.
fundamental. It's so fundamental, and I think it's for very few people. I honestly do, because you know how it is. Sometimes because we inhabit our own world in our own minds, and because
Yeah.
that's what you understand about the world, what's happening inside of your head, it becomes something that it might be very simple for you, or it might be very difficult for you, depending on what we are discussing, what we are talking. And when you're dealing with what, fantastic.
Oh my
So
gosh, that's so funny.
Danny, I would love to hear a little bit about what's a day like on the road is. Tell us a little bit about how does your day generally start, and then how do you navigate the day? What time do you start? What time do you manage to go to bed? Yeah.
Well, every tour is different, honestly, and it really depends on my role. So, like with Bush, all I do. kind of many roles: the production, hospitality, wardrobe, and photo. So I am very, very, very busy on that one. Whereas like when I was with Halestom, I they had a tour photographer, so I was just a production assistant. And it was European festival, so it was like that schedule was super different than like what I'm, my normal schedule. But like a normal day today for me looks like, um, I'm up at like 8 or 9 a.m. It just really depends on what time load in is. But I'm up an hour before load in starts in the building, hanging up signs, assigning dressing rooms. This is if I'm on a headliner tour. But if we're the headliner, I'm up as a production assistant, assigning all the rooms, making sure everything is there for the hospitality rider, making sure everything is set up for catering. Like, all of this stuff had been advanced, prior to the show, obviously, just making sure everything is there, how we advanced it. Um, I get the runners in the morning. I give them lists for bus stock, anything the band needs, any gear the crew needs, if they need cables or, a guitar center run or whatever. I send the runners to go get those things. Um, I work on, you know, getting our guest list together. Our tour manager and I both kind of have a hand in doing that, and we make sure the guest list is prepped. If I have extra time during my day, I will prep it and get it ready and send it off to the house production. I do a venue walkthrough so that I know, especially being the tour photographer as well, I have to be out in the house during the show. So I sort of need to navigate, like, okay, how do I get on and off the stage? How do I get to this place? On Bush, Gavin runs out into the crowd, so we're like, okay, how is he gonna get from point A to point B? Like all of us throughout the day are kind of having to figure that stuff out. Um, I do our band laundry, so I'll throw that in the morning and kind of get that going. Just making sure all the dressing rooms are set up, make sure all the wardrobe cases are set up in the dressing rooms. Make sure stage coolers are filled. I'm sort of just running around doing all the things, whatever anybody needs. That's what I'm there for.
It's a lot of stuff people don't realize, because distances can be quite a thing as well, right? Like within the venue or on a festival site, from the dressing room area, the compound, all the way to the stage, it can get quite lengthy, those distances.
Yeah, I mean, festivals are crazy. Those can be far. Those can be super far. And then, when that happens, you have to schedule golf carts or schedule cars to like take you, when your band has to be on stage, get the band to stage or get them, wherever they need to go. And you kind of have to be really good at time management, which honestly is something like I always really struggled with, is like my time management. And being in this industry um, has forced me to have to be good at time management, you know, because you have to go on stage on time. Like if there are places like casinos or, stuff like that, where it's like, you will be penalized financially if you are on stage late, because now you're running into, things are set very scheduled, because there are curfews and there are like, things with the fire marshals and stuff that like has to be adhered to. You can't just go on whenever you feel like going on, like there are schedules and you have to make sure people stick to those schedules. And that can be difficult in itself, because sometimes they're like, I'm not ready, you better get ready because it's time. I think you have to bring a very nurturing but firm, like, okay, let's go. We got to get moving here. But yeah, I mean, that's what my day looks like. And before all of that, I'm advancing our backstage and hospitality and catering and stuff like that, and just running around through the day on Bush, because I'm also their tour photographer. Like, normally if I'm just production assistant, during the show is when I'm sort of like starting to pack up the cases, like anything on like candles and random decorate, like whatever people want, I'll put back because they don't need all that when they come off. But like, they'll want their stuff to shower and make sure that's all set up. Like, I'll leave all that out until they're off stage and done doing that. But that's sort of the time when I pack up all the cases. But when I'm also the tour photographer, I have to be taking photos during the set. So like on Bush, I'll like run out for a few songs, run around and take photos. I'll run back and start to pack up cases, and I'll run back out and take some more photos. And it's just like back and forth all the time. And I'm like the sweatiest version of myself. And I was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm good. I'm just really fast right now." But I mean, it's great. It keeps me busy. The thing that I really, really, really love about this industry is I um, get bored very easily. So this is great for me because it's like I have just enough, like you were saying earlier, that we have just enough routine that we know there are certain tasks that need done every day, but it's different every day. You're dealing with the different people, you're dealing with the different venues, and different set lists and different all kinds of different stuff. So it's like just enough routine to like keep me sane. um but I'm not ever bored, which is great for me because I would just probably go do something else then, because I don't want to be bored. I want to love what I'm doing, and I genuinely, like, for the first time in my life, just absolutely love what I'm doing.
So fortunate to find that. A lot of people, the vast majority of
Absolutely.
people, will navigate life and will be just on a career or on a job for the reasons that you've mentioned it about your parents. And my parents are very similar as well. I mean, they've had myself, me very when I'm very young, and then you don't get a chance to really try different things because you've got little kid that you have to provide for, and so I believe that the the most important thing is actually trying to find something of an interest, and a lot of people, they just don't even try that, which is a big shame, because even if you can't really pay the bills with the sole with one single job, you know you should always try and make space for that kind of thing, in order for you to keep going with a dream, keep the dream alive, and keep yourself, like, giving you reasons to wake up in the morning and do whatever else you're doing at the time, in order to keep that flame alive within you. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, and I think like it is scary, and unfortunately there are people that are not in the position to be able to take as many of those risks. Like, they do have little kids at home, or they're not financially stable. But even so, like, when I started touring, it's so funny, and this is so random, but like, I was looking the other day, like I said, when I started touring, I was at probably the one of the very lowest points of my life. Like, just like I said, everything was crashing down around me. I just like, I have no idea who I am as a person, but I know that I'm not happy and this isn't working for me, and I need something different. And this is what I had like a little passion for. And like I said, maybe I wasn't going to like it once I started it, but you know, I decided to take that risk, and I did have the support of my family, and I found something that I am passionate about and does motivate me. And it's amazing how your mental health changes when you are doing things that don't just absolutely drain you. And this drains some people. Like, some people would not be able to do this job. Like, this is not for them. They need the routine and they need the stability, and for me it's the opposite. And I really think that, I like you said, I am very fortunate to have found this career. And a lot of these people have been doing it since they were super young, and I started doing it in my 30s. But I don't think it's ever too late for anybody to, take the risk to do something that they love to do. Like, your mental health is so important at the end of the day. Like, as long as you can pay your bills that you need to pay, like, why not be happy? Like, I got to a point where I'm like, I cannot wake up every single day like this. I can't do that. And so I changed it. And I made so many excuses. Like, I was a person that I made so many excuses my whole life for why I couldn't do this or why I couldn't do that, and it's like I never was really trying. And I think it's because, a lot of times I was scared to actually achieve those things, because that would mean change, and change is scary for people. And, I finally decided to do it, and a lot changed, and it was really scary. And now I'm just like, I want other people to be inspired to, maybe they don't need to make a huge drastic change, like completely switching their careers or something, but like, I hope that I at least inspire people to make those little changes within themselves. Like, you don't have to be miserable every day. Like, that is literally your choice. And we live, like, I think we talked about this when we were on tour together. Like, energy is a very, very real thing. And the more, like, we live inside our heads. Like, you cannot escape yourself. You live in there. Like, you need to make that a safe and good place to live. And I think that a lot of people don't do that, and they just get overwhelmed. And so do I. Like, I struggle with anxiety and depression too, but like, I consciously, and I'm in therapy. I make it, like, I make the effort to wake up every day and be like, I am going to make today a good day, because there are lots of things in life that suck. Lots and lots of things. It's so easy to wake up and be like, this day sucks. Like, and we all have that. But I think people need to make a conscious effort to, like, find the good. Like, as cliche as it sounds, like, you have to do that. Because when I started having a better mindset, like, my days really did drastically change. And of course, like, I have terrible days like anybody else. Like, I just do. But you have to get in that mindset where you're like, okay, this is going to work out. And, I took the risk to be here, and now I have to figure it out. And that's all you can really do.
Absolutely. Do you come from a religious family background? Where did you get the influence or the inspiration or even the awareness about your mind, the things that you just basically mentioned out, the mind, therapy, mental health, all of those things that sometimes get quite cluttered in the world out there, and we are not very much encouraged, say in school when we're a kid, to try and comprehend what's happening inside of our minds. So where did that emerge from?
So for me, um, it sort of did happen as a teenager. I had a very sort of turbulent teenage years. Again, we'll dive into a little vulnerable subject here, but my mom was an addict when I was in, high school, whatever. Um, and there's just a lot of stuff that went on that was just not, you know, a kid my age, 14 years old, shouldn't have been seen or dealing with. Can you hear me? Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, and so I was in a school that saw, like, okay, my grades were plummeting. I was not showing up to school. Like, all of these things were happening. I was just making very bad decisions. And my school put me in mandatory counseling. And they were like, listen, like, we want to help you, but you need to like help yourself. And so I went into counseling, and they're like, you need to start looking at these things. And as a teenager, like, I did not care. Like, I was very troubled. Like, I was in a place where I was like, this is just the worst ever. And my mom has been clean for 5 or 6 years now, and she's the best, but she just had her demons that it took a long time for her to overcome. She fights that every day. And you know but I was forced into therapy, and I didn't do therapy then for a lot of years, pretty much my whole adulthood. But I sort of just, as I got older, took it upon myself to be like, this is not right still. And I wanted to not feel that way anymore. So I did dive back into therapy, and it was sort of, I got a lot of tools that way. And, reading a lot of or stoic quotes, or, whatever. I think that there's a lot of good, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but there's a lot of good like principles there to look at. And I think, I'm very much a person that I want to hear different like things, and I want to be able to, I'm not very one track minded. Like, I like to get all the different things and make my own decisions, based on the facts or the things that I'm being presented with. And, my family does come from a religious background. My parents weren't super religious. My great grandfather was a pastor, and, we did all that stuff. And, I believe that there's like a higher power. I don't know, can't say exactly that I believe in like one certain thing, but I believe there's something bigger than us. And I believe in energy, and I believe that like we really much are beings that need to self-reflect, and I think people don't do that often enough.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm with you in all of that. I think due to some like you've mentioned, some troubles that you were facing on your teens, you got presented with this tool, which is therapy, very early on. And I wish more people could have access to that, because it's not an
Mm-hmm.
easy thing, even in countries like in the UK, in the US. I mean, those things, they're not very accessible yet, and the services that are offered, sometimes they are not like as good as going private. And going private, people have to make that space within their budgets in order to accommodate that. And then, depending on where you faced in life, you just don't have the means to do it, and I think it's absolutely crucial. I think we should all have access to that somehow, and should be government funded, because we would definitely be able to understand ourselves better, and understand each other better, really. And as a consequence, have a bit of a more of a, I don't know, maybe a better world, or maybe head towards a better future. Because when you have still like the troubles that we face still, like 2024, and we're still fighting wars, we're still invading countries, we're still like trying to conquer a bit more land and a bit more power and a bit more this and that, and just killing people for those sole reasons, which is just
Yeah.
insane. I think it's like it's where our minds are too attached to the experience, to what your eyes, your ears, and everything, all our five senses are basically delivering to us. And living in a world as the one that we do, with established hierarchical establishments, like financial agreements, and work, and these and that, and bills. Everything just drives people crazy. and
Yeah.
and as a consequence, we have a very tender, political and social situations taking place in the world. I think that we are very much lucky, like you've said, used the word lucky a few times. But I also think that it's not only that; it's about um, the fact that you do, on your particular case, you did seek change, you did seek assistance, you did try to evolve, you did try to understand what was happening within yourself, and as a consequence, you're creating a life for yourself every day, because that's where life happens. Life happens right here, right now. It's not about what happened last month. It's not what happened in the future. Obviously, that we carry all that information within ourselves, and we make decisions based on what happened yesterday and what we are aiming tomorrow. But we can never forget that the only thing that's really real, it's the present moment. But due to all of that, you are creating your present experience, and getting yourself in a position that you get to experience the world and life in a way that makes you happy, that you're happier than otherwise, because we all navigate, like you said, every day. We do navigate emotions every day. You never wake up and you like from 9 a.m. all the way to midnight happy, 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 or sad, 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 sad.
Yeah.
It's a decision. It's a conscious decision that you can make as well. Which feelings, which emotions am I going to engage with, right? Which ones am I going to empower?
Yeah, and I think it's so important, and mental health is so important. It's so important just every day in your life, in your career. And again, like sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I'm choosing violence today. I just, but no, but people have bad days. Like, I don't know. You saw me on that last start. I'm like, I'm going nuts today. Like, I just say, I'm like, that's
But
fine.
with a smile on your face.
With a smile on my face,
Yeah.
I'm going nuts. It's okay. Live, laugh, lose your mind. It's okay. But it comes to a point where you're like, hey, like you can't. It's hard because I think people sometimes are very much a victim of their circumstances, and like you can't be that. Like you might have had all these things happen to you in your life, and like I said, some of those things truly are harder for people to get out of than others. Like I'm totally understandable to that. Like I understand I can't be like, well, just go do something else. Like not everyone has the means to do that. I was very very fortunate that I was able to do that, but not everybody can. But I think it starts with changing your mindset. I think that's the very root of it. And you can't just think, a lot of people are like, they'll message me and they'll be like, you're so lucky. You're so lucky. Like, I am lucky. I am fortunate. I met the right people at the right time. I was in the right place, but I worked really hard to get to this point. I went out and I networked my ass off, and I was like, I want to do this, and then when I got there, I was like overwhelmed, but I was like, I had something to prove because I am new to this. I don't have the connections in the industry, and I wanted to work hard, and show that I was like good at my job. And now I'm to the point where like I do have routines and I do know what I'm doing, compared to when I first started. But now it's to the point where I'm like interested in learning other roles, because I'm like I don't want to learn everybody's role and just be okay at everything, but like I think it's important to be well-rounded and get really really good at a couple of things, so I don't go into a tour and I'm like, well, I'm only a tour photographer. I only do this one thing, whatever that one thing is, and like I can't provide you know any other thing to you than that one thing. But it's like, hey, like you need a production assistant. I'm really good at being a production assistant. I'm also really good at being a photographer. Like some tours like that, it's so crazy because like mid-level touring, which is where I normally sort of like that mid-level I'm at, like people wear many hats. Our tour manager does, all kinds of things other than just settle shows. She does a lot of stuff. Our PM does a lot, like everybody does a lot of stuff, and everybody works so hard. And I just came off of helping out a production company doing photos on a stadium tour, and it's so different. And like those people work so incredibly hard also, but it was such a fascinating world to me, because I'm like, you have one person for every job. Like, this is crazy. But anyway, but yeah, I think like everybody works so hard, and you have to choose every day to work hard. You have to choose every day to like be in that mindset where you're like, I want this. We have goals, but like you said, like we have to live in the present moment. Like whatever you're doing right now is going to build whatever you're working toward in the future.
For sure, for sure. Danny, is there anything that you need to have with you while you're on the road? Anything that you need to have with you as a physical thing, or any type of food or anything that you can't live without it while you're away from home?
That is a great question. See, these are the things I don't think about, where I'm just like, wow, this is a really good question. I don't know how to answer it. I've recently just started making sure I always have chamomile tea with me in my suitcase, because I have found that if you haven't noticed, I'm severely ADD and everything is crazy. I sleep at night because I'm just thinking all the time. But I found that chamomile tea with a little bit of honey just calms me down. I'll just go right to sleep. And so I've been carrying chamomile tea and honey with me, like in my backpack into my hotel room and stuff.
Very
So
cool.
that's one thing. Um, Something I can't. Oh my gosh. That's a good question. I don't know. My camera gear is always with me. Always. Because even if I'm not the photographer on tour, I am always snapping
Snapping
pictures of the
pictures.
cities I'm in.
Very cool. Very cool. Danny, I mean, honestly, I want to be mindful of your time, and I think uh, hearing your story, I'm inspired by it, and I think it's just so important and so cool to have people like yourself willing to, open up and tell your story. And I hope that people that will be listening to this from whichever background or walk of life, I'm 100% sure that people will take something very inspirational from this conversation, because again, um, sometimes life just sucks for a lot of people, and the fact that in one way or another you've managed to navigate your 20s and go through all the ups and downs of life, personal life, professional life, life at home, and make the change, have the guts to really try something completely different, and completely change your life, your personal life and your professional career, and having the mindset that you have, and having had the chance to work with you, which was an absolute delight. I mean, you're just so amazing at what you do, and it was so great. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to speak to me today, and to talk to everyone. And I hope and I'm sure we will cross paths again in the future. So thank you so much for your time today, Danny. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I'm sure we will cross paths again, but it was so great working with you, and hopefully we get to work together again. But it was great talking to you on here.
Awesome! Yay! We did it! I love it!
All right.
So
Thank you
good.
so much.
Thanks, Danny. Thank you for your time, hun. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Look after
Yeah.
yourself, and when it's out, I'll send you the link, and I'll tag you on Instagram and all of that.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye, hon.
Bye.
Bye.